Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Ramadan Mubarak. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the Healthy Muslim in Ramadan. Ethics are essential to the physician and to the practice of medicine. Why? Because for the individual human, the right to life must be enshrined in moral principle. And the right to life incorporates the right to health. There are other rights, the right to freedom, the right to all sorts of other things, education, so on. But the right to health is something that is the first rung of any understanding between the physician and the patient, and between any governance, whether it's from government, from insurance, from families supporting an individual, however that treatment gets applied, the right is there. We're in an advanced stage of civilization. In the time of the Jahiliyyah, people were treated. They didn't have much medicine, but they did treat patients. As long as man has been known, treatment, the need to take medicine, has been part of core development. But in all religions, medicine and healing has been free because it's been seen as a human right, an essential right, a spiritual right. And the healer has been seen to be doing something that is within the will of the Creator, to cherish his creation. The relationship between the physician and the patient, therefore, must encompass that right to health and right to treatment. But the treatment mustn't be an imposed value system. It must understand the value system of the person being treated. Remember the way I was describing to you how the Islamic physician at the time of the Prophet would examine a patient. Before he got on to symptoms and signs, he would go into detail about the culture, the circumstance, the genetics, the background. All of these things would be seen as a totality. Physicians today are told to respect the religious beliefs, the cultural beliefs, the racial understanding, and the sexuality of their patient. Respect meaning tolerate. There's a difference between toleration and understanding. And sadly, I don't think that the understanding is represented at all in today's medicine, because we deal with symptoms and signs. We don't spend the time to know the individual in front of us. This is important because for many people from different backgrounds, different educational backgrounds, different cultural understandings, the world of modern medicine is an alien world. It is not your gardens with lute music and massage and perfume and that were described, I was describing at the time of the Islamic Renaissance. They are anonymous, horrible, modern palaces with ladies with clipboards who only identify you as a number, who absolutely do not know you as a human personality, but as a representation, a walking or wheeling representation of an illness. She's the asthmatic. No, I'm not. I'm a person. The ethics of our understanding of the patient has been lost. In the ethics of medicine, we must pay attention to the cultural understanding of the investigations we're doing, of the fear the patient might have, and how do they give consent to the procedures we're suggesting when they are terrified. Communication has to come from understanding where that patient, that individual is coming from, with love. Otherwise, the patient will accept the treatment in terror and will have side effects which come from, if you like, their own fantasy of the harm which inevitably has been done to them. We have a wonderful medicine called placebo, which is if you think something's going to do you good, a whole amazing amount of neurophysiological responses happen, and believe it or not, it does do you good. And this is very complicated in testing drugs, because 50% of the people will say that the placebo, oh, it was great, oh, it gave me a headache. So people who said it was great believed it would help them. People who said it gave them a headache and they had tummy ache and they nearly fainted and their skin itched are naturally frightened of medicines, of pharmaceutical, chemical preparations, and instinctually from their culture believe it will do them harm. We call these people negative placebo responders. It doesn't matter what you give them. They will say, oh, I feel terrible, I'm never going to take that drug again, it nearly killed me. We have to understand the ethics of our communication is understanding. Where is it in today's medicine? It's enshrined in the Hippocratic Oath, do no harm. But if the person has no confidence in your medicine and one tablet of vitamin C nearly causes them to collapse, they're so frightened, you're doing them harm. So we can't just have our clever scientific books and say aspirin will help in this way, take it. We have to know whether this patient really understands what we're talking about and trusts us. In our understanding of the medical process, we have treatments, we have costs, we have massive costs. Are those costs to be distributed equally? If, as a country, as a government, we believe that health is a human right, that has to mean that treatment of illness is universal. In the Islamic world, in the Renaissance, all medicine was free. All people had equal access to medicine. There wasn't one medicine for the rich and one for the poor. Anyone who wished to avail themselves of the medicine could. And they were cherished. The medicine came with a large dose of love. How many million Americans are uninsured? The only medicine available to them is emergency medicine. That isn't universal rights. That's selective rights based on money, because the insured can afford medicine. People who have more insurance can afford more medicine. And how much medicine you get depends on how you can pay for it. So we have a sliding scale of our human right and our right to health. And that sliding scale is determined by our ability to pay, not our intrinsic human worth. This is a perversion of the real sense of medical ethics. In the development of medicine, we have a different situation where money is developing more and more sophisticated treatments because the people developing these treatments are making money. And they are encouraging you to use these treatments, and these are the treatments that are advertised tested, studied, and we are very, very determined to protect our scientific method and only use these medications which have gone through the rigorous scientific process. The problem is that the science is also at the mercy of profits. Please come back after the break, because I need to show you how ethics has skewed the honesty of our most rigorous scientific process. So we trust these incredibly important and clever scientists who rigorously test everything that is given to us and give us statements of the expensive trials that have been done to prove the science of what they're giving us. These trials, by the way, to get a medicine to market now costs at a minimum for your earliest provisional trials, which is what we call phase 1. Trials of phase 1, 2 and 3. Phase 1 is £10 million. The problem is that there are medicines out there, Islamic medicines, herbal medicines, traditional medicines, as well as medicines which have been around a long time and therefore no longer come under a patent clause. These medicines can't be tested because nobody will be able to make a profit out of them, so they're not going to pay the 10 million to find whether it works. In cancer, there's a major inflammatory element. Aspirin, a pot of 100 aspirin costs what? 50p? Aspirin is a powerful anti-inflammatory. Nobody's going to test it in cancer, but somebody a bit clever thought, well, people with rheumatism, some of them take aspirin in big doses, and people with heart disease and hypertension, some of them take aspirin. So let's go through the computer, let's look at the rheumatoid patients taking aspirin, let's look at the hypertensive taking aspirin, and if those people get cancer, let's compare them with the people with the same cancer who are not taking aspirin. Surprise, surprise, aspirin works. Aspirin works every bit as well as some of the medicines which will cost 1,000, 5,000, 50,000 a year, the profit of which for the pharmaceutical companies is enormous. Why isn't your doctor prescribing you aspirin? Because he can't, because he has no scientific information and it hasn't been tested. So in this situation, the ethics of scientific information is being skewed by the profit motive. They're no longer looking for the truth of what will help you. They're looking for what will help the pharmaceutical industry. Many people take herbal remedies with great benefit. We know this because the 15 million uninsured Americans have to take something. There was a very interesting study done in America recently, not by people who care about the health of the elderly. The study was on 65,000 American centenarians. Who cares about 100-year-old people in America? Nobody. This was commissioned by the insurance companies because they wanted to know what was it about these people that lived to be 100 that were very cheap. They were healthy and they weren't consuming a lot of money which insurance companies were having to pay, which they'd much prefer that you paid your insurance and they didn't have to pay for any medicine. You know, people in their 60s, they get tin hips, tin knees, they take tablets for diabetes and so on. So what is it with these centenarians? Interesting bunch of people. Centenarians are people. They're not loners. They don't live in cities, they live in the town. That was known by the Muslim physicians. Ibn Khaldun observed that. So we're reinventing the wheel again. These are people who worked. They enjoyed work. Only 5% gave up work at 65. 5% were in paid work at 100. Alhamdulillah. These were people who had survived disasters. They were a cup half full people, not a cup half empty. They accepted change, they moved on. But what was their attitude to their health? They ate well. They ate 3 meals a day, they were neither fat nor thin, they didn't smoke, they didn't drink alcohol. They didn't follow faddy diets. They ate very different things, but they ate in measure of what was around them. They didn't believe much in doctors. One person said, "When I was 6, I was kicked by a horse and the doctor said I would die. Well, the doctor died and the horse died and I'm still here." So they listened to the doctors, but they didn't necessarily believe them. What medicine did they take? Herbal medicine. They went to doctors for bone setting and if they needed surgery for some major condition. But for the ordinary things in life, they didn't go to a doctor. I think that study has been buried. I think very few people now know about it because the wisdom contained in it is very embarrassing. I'm sad that the ethics of the medical profession is driving it unconsciously away from the natural fitra of man with a right to determine his own role in life and the right to health, the right to have treatment for his illness. We're looking at the wrong things. We're measuring without meaning, full of sense and empty of meaning. We're really seriously in trouble. And the conscious person in Ramadan, fasting, learning about their body, must think deeply about the moral values that are engaged when they go to their doctor. Trust your instincts. Stand up against this mighty machine of the clipboard and the anonymous number and the instruction to take a medicine that you don't understand. Get a doctor who engages with you, who understands you, who treats you as a real person and who understands your moral dimension. Of course, there are serious issues involving other aspects of medical ethics, the ethics of end-of-life care, the ethics of transplantation, the ethics of artificial fertilization. Many of these things are enshrined in religion because we have religious authorities working very closely with doctors, looking very deeply at what is actually involved. And some of the answers are quite interesting, and I'm quite happy to see how our ulama, our advisors, are actually quite clever and scientific and are on message about what is happening. But the totality of the true understanding of the human being in Tawheed, the human between spirit, mind and body, and the ethics of the totality of the understanding of that principle, that is being lost in medicine today. The driving force is money. The driving force is an obscuration of the truth when it comes to what is really happening in your treatment in hospital. For those of you who live alone, I urge you to get friends, to get people who will be with you when you're sick, who will be with you when you go to the doctor, to hear what the doctor is saying and to be on your side when you're trying to understand the decisions you must make. The ethics of medicine is its moral dimension. If your doctor is simply ordering you to have an operation without explaining its side effects, its dangers, its consequences, and says, well, we'll put you on the waiting list and your GP can explain it to you. No, he can't. Your GP doesn't know anything about it. We've got a moral maze going on here in which the real communication between the healer and the patient is being eroded by computers. People go online to find out what it was the doctor was talking about. They shouldn't have to get the interpretation of a computer. They should know that the doctor is clear in his explanations and understanding. This is the ethics of medicine. This is the value of where you are. I was thrown out of the National Health Service because I refused to allow the hospital to refuse treatment for a baby because of budgetary reasons. I knew this baby would die without a pacemaker. Pacemaker only costs £500. The hospital, a good teaching hospital in London, had put the baby on a waiting list of 6 months. They knew my recommendation. They knew the facts. They said, no, we're not going to treat her. I made sure the baby got treatment. In the process, I got sacked. I was ethical. I put the needs of the patient before my career, and I have absolutely never regretted it. You will find yourselves in moral dilemmas. You'll feel alone. Allah is with you. Allah will guide you. If you don't understand who Allah is, the truth will guide you. Instinct that what matters as a physician, the only thing that matters is the good for the patient. I hope all of you have physicians who have that moral value. Assalamu alaikum.